Dr. Bridge Bombi. It's time for our Centric Health Hour. Dr. Bombi is one of our community's leading medical experts, and I got to start off by asking Dr. Bombi what he thinks about this smoke and what we're supposed to do. Dr. Bridge Bombi, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. Before we get to the coronavirus, we got a lot to cover. How serious do you take this smoke as a health threat?
It is a very serious health threat, Richard. It has a full spectrum of very dangerous implications. So let's start with the immediate or acute effects. So what happens is when you inhale this particulate material, which we consider something less than 2.5 microns in size, which is really small in diameter, what it does is it goes from our nose into our lungs and then directly into the blood vessels. Once it goes in the blood vessels, it interacts with our blood cells called macrophages and initiates an inflammatory response. A person who's predisposed to have heart attack or stroke, they have already built up plaque. It causes disruption in the plaque, what we call plaque rupture. So there is an immediate threat of a heart attack and stroke when exposed to deleterious air like what we have today or for the last couple of days. So there have been studies conducted in our part of the world, in LA, that high smog days correlate with high heart attack and high stroke rate. So that's just like cash payment based on exposure to high particulate material related to smog, the wildfires and everything else, and the fact that we live in the valley where nothing escapes anyway. That's the acute. Then the intermediate and long term is based on the same thought process because atherosclerosis or the plaque building is largely an inflammatory response. So when you have this continued exposure when you live in the valley to high particulate material, it predisposes you to higher probability of coronary artery disease, high probability of cerebrovascular disease, also high probability of diabetes and hypertension, not even counting the direct correlationship that most people drive with the bad air and the lungs.
I had no idea. This is the first time I've heard. I knew it wasn't good for respiratory issues, but did you just say that when you breathe these things in, it goes straight into the bloodstream, that it can actually, if you have a buildup of plaque, it could help that plaque break off where it could lead to a stroke or a heart attack? Is that what you just told me?
I think you were listening. Yes, Richard.
Wow. That's terrifying. You know? Well, do masks help? Do the type of masks that we've been wearing for COVID, do they provide any relief from this fire smoke?
That's a very technical question, and I don't have the answer to that. I think the N95 might, but at the end of the day, the holes, the pores in the mask have to be less than. My guess is not. So there was a study done in, and I'm quoting from memory, in Beijing or someplace like that in China, probably in Beijing, China, and they looked at the masks and their efficacy in particulate matter reduction. There was pretty much the study was all over the place because first the masks were of different qualities. Two people wear masks in different ways. So if you wear the mask and it's not tight enough, there's a lot of air that comes from the sides in. So there were a lot of variables that were not addressed. My suspicion is a good answer doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's my suspicion.
Okay, I appreciate it. That's a good, honest answer. Let's get to COVID. Dr. Bombi, I've been meaning to ask you this. We saw what's happening at colleges and universities across the country, and I'll use two of them, the University of Notre Dame and North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Two universities that decided that they thought they had the protocol established on campus to be able to handle the coronavirus. They get the kids in there, and within a week, they reverse course because cases explode. And I looked at this, and I'm not going to get into condemning young people for their actions. I understand why they did it. We were all young once. But it begs the question for me, what are the consequences if we as a society just aren't capable of having the kind of discipline it needs to beat back this virus? Where does that go?
Discipline is necessary to beat the virus. That goes without saying. But can we inculcate discipline universally? I think the answer is absolutely not across the world. In the Western world, unfortunately, more so than the Eastern world. You know what they did in China, and they essentially eliminated the virus. I was looking at some of the pictures from Wuhan where it had thousands of people in water listening to some event. They're really on the top of each other. And that was a very vivid imagery to suggest what Eastern world, in their manner of control of liberty and freedom, can do what we in the Western world can't. So discipline here is autonomous. Over there, it's enforced. It's a significant distinction, and that's not confined to USA. Look what's happening in Spain, for instance. There is a resurgence. So, but coming back to schools and colleges here, all of us feel very strongly that schools and colleges should be open because building a human being is a lifelong process, and if you take away a year or two of their formative experiences, the damage can be incalculable in both in their development and in their income prospects down the line. But having said that, you can't have ups and downs where downs dominate the ups. So you really have to pay attention to discipline. These sorority parties where hundreds of people get together, and they're smart kids. They know the difference. It's just a sense of immunity that they're going to be okay that actually exposes the society to damage. Because I don't care how sincere you are in your segmentation effort that, okay, I'm young, I can handle it, but I won't expose my grandpa to it. Mm-hmm. But that segmentation is very porous. The shield is very porous. So this, in every state, look at Florida, when the infection spread in the younger people, they eventually permeated to nursing homes. Mm-hmm. This process will never end. If you can't, the college kids should know discipline. Absolutely so. They should behave. They're old enough.
Right. I mean, but when you said that there's going to be incalculable damage done because of this disruption, and you're talking, and I'm thinking about all these kids who in high school, and my producer JR has a son who's just supposed to start BHS, and what a different experience that's going to be trying to, for the online learning. What research have you seen that points to how badly this could damage? And you even mentioned this could hurt their ability, how much money they make in the future. Talk about that for a second.
So there is no research. Obviously, research has to be prospective. What we are thinking is a futuristic projection. But I'll look at my kids. My kids are older. They are between ages of 26 to 32. But they are going through the different phases. And there is an impact on their overall experience of life. The overall experience of life has been constricted for all of us. But when you are in the formative years, the constriction could last much longer. The interactions, all the little things we do, Richard, how we fight with people, how we learn to resolve the conflicts, how we make friends, how we network, all of that experience, if you take the academic year 2019-20, and then 2020-21, has been damaged. look at the athletes who were going to peak in 19 or 20 or 21, or who, the implications of lack of discipline on our part are profound, that if we had exercised discipline, distancing, and learned to live by the rules of the virus will be living by our rules now, not vice versa. So I think we lost a lot of time in trying to fight the virus through our audacity. We need to live with the virus, work with the rules, so that we can open the schools. We have to open the schools, but in a way where the transmissibility is low, where the society is able to react to an unexpected or even an expected surge in infections. But discipline has to be the fundamental force.
Let me ask you this, because you can apply math to this to these scenarios. But let's say you're the University of North Carolina, and I don't know what their enrollment is, but let's say there's 25,000 kids on campus, and then you've got a couple thousand faculty and all that. And you come up with 200 cases. Is that a lot or a little? I mean, how do you, when you said we have to live with the virus, what should when you have 25,000 kids on a campus that something, somebody's going to be spreading this virus. When is it too much? What's your protocol on living with the virus?
So you can't have all 25,000 people exposed to the same elements. You have to be able to compartmentalize or create bubbles or pods. So you create a bubble. This is what Denmark has done. So in the schools, they make sure the bubble doesn't have more than 25 people in it. Okay. So those 25 people interact with each other only, but they don't cross-interact. When they don't cross-interact, if one bubble is infected, they don't infect the whole 25,000 people. So if you have 25,000 people in your example, you should have 1,000 bubbles, but each bubble doesn't cross-interact with the other, so you lower the possibility of infection and you monitor every bubble all the time. That's how you minimize the infection. That's how you continue the academic years, and even allow the sports to thrive.
Yeah, given all the problems that you just cited that can happen when we keep these kids out of school for extended periods, knowing where we are with this virus right now, do you think it's wise to reopen schools with the proper protocols?
I think the proper absolutely so. But the operative word is proper protocols. So the proper protocols first demand the transmissibility rate in the community be very low. The positivity rate has to be on the south side of 5, maybe on the south side of 2. When you have, right now, for instance, in New York State, the positivity rate is less than 1. So if you have a low positivity rate, the prevalence of virus is under control, then you're in the green zone and you can open the schools and may have a little more liberty. But I think anytime you take liberty with the virus, it's going to come and bite you. You should follow the stringent measures of keeping the pods or the capsules of groups. They don't interact with each other, but they only interact in that given pod. We can open the schools if we follow distancing, we follow masks, we follow compartmentalization, we follow positivity rate, and we maintain surveillance from infection detection. We do that, we got it covered.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you bring us up to date on the vaccine? As we get closer to November and the election date, it seems like the promise of possibly having a vaccine before the end of the year is slipping through our fingers. What do you hear?
The vaccine research is treacherous research. I just read about Johnson & Johnson. They're going to recruit 60,000 people. So if they're in the process of recruiting 60,000 people now, it's going to take a while for the results to settle. You know, the Moderna virus and the Oxford virus, the vaccines, they have hit the accelerated timelines right on the spot. So there's a hope that the Moderna virus, if it's effective, it could be available right around the Christmas time, or give or take a month. And then there's a whole hoopla of logistics, the formidable challenge of disseminating the vials and making the people accept it. So there are a lot of challenges involved, but I tend to lean on the side of optimism that we should have something good soon.
Like by the end of the year?
Like around the end of the year. I think I would say January, February sounds reasonable.
Okay. And given let's just deal with the U.S. But I mean, 330 million people. Realistically, have we have? I know there's been polio viruses and things like that, or vaccines. Have we ever had a worldwide vaccination program like this before?
Not to this scale ever, because this is a novel threat and everybody's equally susceptible. Most other diseases have been around. Smallpox has been around for over 1,000 years. Measles have been around thousands of years. So there have been some community immunity. This one lacked that. That's what the novel virus is all about. Nobody has any significant immunity to it. And thus all are equally susceptible. So all need to be protected. That makes it special and different in the same category of 1918 influenza. H1N1.
Right. And how long would it take? You'd have to set up some protocol on who's going to get it first. I'm assuming you're going to have first responders and medical workers and people who work in hospitals, and maybe move on to those most at risk. It just sounds to me, by the time we get to everybody, that sounds like a long process. Does it not?
It is a long process. But if we can protect the most vulnerable, the whole thought process is the people downstream who have less consequences from the virus can wait a little longer, even though now there's accumulating evidence that the people who, what I call post-COVID syndrome or long COVID, there are a lot of people, and one study I looked at, a significant proportion of those people are women in their early 40s. That was a shocker to me, that we always felt that young women are kind of more protected than others. But in the long haulers, or the people with post-COVID syndrome, women age 44 is the largest representation.
Why do you suppose that is?
It's just a finding. We don't know the reason for it.
Wow.
This is from a neuroscience department in Mount Sinai, New York. They looked at 1,400 people, and it just seems to gather around 44-year-old women. This is shocking. We don't know the reasons for it, but it gets your attention because the concept of immunity is real only if you don't fall sick and not end up as a long hauler.
Right. Wow, there's a new one. 44-year-old. I had no idea. Always learn something every day when you come on, Dr. Bridge Bombi. We're out of time. Dr. Bombi, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Stay safe. Stay out of this heat. Stay out of the smoke. I hope you have a good weekend, sir.
You too.
Okay, thanks, sir. Appreciate it.